Jack, to kind of close out this episode, do you have time to talk about an incident that you were a part of that kind of highlights some of the stuff that we're talking about?
There's so many to choose from. I'd prefer to use one that I wasn't involved in, but I know about it in very in depth, and it's a case where that I debrief in my class where there's a tactical flight officer, a very strong, experienced tactical flight officer that stands up and breaks the tunnel vision chain, where everybody has tunnel vision on a rear upstairs apartment, and the facts don't back it up that he's going to be in there. I mean, he wasn't last seen in there. I mean, there was no reason to believe that he's still in there. And a field commander was getting tunnel vision on that apartment. And they said
this was an officer down call.
It was a dead officer. And the surviving partner had limited information where he last saw the guy. And the initial perimeter was like 8 blocks. And the next crew that got there 5 minutes into this said, wow, we got to make this much bigger. Time has been elapsing. And when he goes to make it much bigger, he gets heavy resistance from a field commander who is much higher rank than he is, than that TFO. And he stands up and says, no, we're making it bigger. And of course, at the end of the day, when they find this guy, he's 3.5 blocks away from where this officer was killed. And I use that one because it shows the tunnel vision that gets involved and how the TFO, looking down from above, can visualize, hey, this is where it happened. If this guy went this way, man, he's got a free run down this alley, and this guy could be 6 blocks away by now. And standing his ground and trying to explain, yes, maybe he is in that apartment, but what if he isn't? And that's what I really try and stress, is that, is that apartment, is that house, is that motel room, is that the hot zone where it happened? Yes, it is. But you better have a containment for a plan B so that when SWAT goes into that motel room and he's not there, now what do you do? Oh, well, we got a 1 block perimeter. 1 block for a dead police officer. That's not right. It should be huge, but they got tunnel vision on this small area. So the general rule is, you can concentrate on a plan A. He's still in that house, but you have to think, what if he isn't? As a TFO, what if he isn't? The TFO should be the what if person. I think the field commander should be too, but the TFO's 500, 1,000 feet looking down going, what if he did this? What if he did that? I'm going to plan for that, and I'm going to use tactics to contain this guy. And that ended up being a success. Although there's a dead officer, 3.5 hours later, that suspect's in custody. And it's because that TFO stood their ground on what they knew was tactically right, based on the facts that they had and what they were looking at and their experience of containing people on a nightly basis and seeing the mistakes that are made, tunnel vision being one of the big ones. So I like to use that one. Even though I wasn't over that, I know everybody that was very closely, and I interviewed them at length and said, "What did they say then? And what did you do?" And it always impressed me with how they handled it, and I was just so proud of the way they handled it. But it's hard. It's hard to do.
I remember that debrief from your class, and you went through quite a few debriefs of incidents in that class. Can you give a synopsis of what your class is and how people can find it?
Yeah. It's apprehending fleeing suspects, suspect tactics, and perimeter containment. And it's basically how to contain, search, and capture suspects safely and efficiently. And it's kind of broken down to a bunch of sections. We talk about suspect tactics. What are the trends and tactics that bad guys use when they're fleeing on foot? How can we contain them? The ABCs of perimeter containment, the general rules. And then how do we manage that perimeter after it's set? That's a big one. And then when I say manage, I'm not talking about not necessarily talking about a sergeant or a lieutenant or managing. I'm talking about all of us. How do we manage that perimeter, our jobs, our roles in that perimeter? And then search techniques, I cover those at length. Not necessarily canine or SWAT or patrol, but personal search techniques. And then I end with the debriefs. And I still get texts and emails and calls and say, man, I remember that one debrief. I had an incident tonight and I thought of that debrief and I did something different. And that just makes me feel so good that people remember the debriefs. And that's why I do them, because I think they are impactful. And I think officers leave the class and going, wow, this is real. I mean, and that could be me tonight, and but that's it in a nutshell. And officertactics.com is my website. And I'm still keeping busy doing that class. I'm amazed. It goes in waves, but right now I'm getting a lot of calls on it because there's a lot of young police departments. I was talking to a lieutenant last night from a Central California agency, and I told him, I said, I got your email, and it's identical to 10 other emails I've gotten in the past year. Our department is young. We're making mistakes on this. How can we clean this up? Could training help us? Could this guy Jack help us? We'll see. And we have a conversation, and everybody's in the same boat. It's not something that you do every night. Some departments do, the big ones do, but most departments don't do perimeters nightly or weekly. And then all of a sudden, they got an officer laying there bleeding, and the guy's running, and they've got to do one now, and they don't know what to do. Some of them, But the class covers a lot of different things related to perimeters and searching.
We're looking to bring you down to Southern California in the spring.
Looking forward to that.
To do a half-day class as a fly-in, so that information will go out. And I don't want to speak for you, Jack, but I know you travel around the country doing the class. So for agencies that aren't on the West Coast, this is something still available. It's like I said, this is the best class I've ever taken, and I'm not saying that because you're sitting right here.
I know you're not, but I appreciate that.
If you guys can find a way in your training budget to bring Jack out and teach his class, it'll be worth the money you spend, and highly recommend it. So on that, Jack, thank you for joining us to talk about kind of a difficult topic to breach, right?
It is tough.
I appreciate your insight, and Jeff, thank you for joining us and talking about your experience as well. Yeah. So until next time, we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Good to have you.
See ya.